Okay, time for the TLDC of 2026.8, the Home Assistant's August release. Ashley, I'm going to share your screen and let's get started.
Yeah, so a quick thing just before we actually start demoing some of the things. The main theme here is for this release is approachability. We want to make Home Assistant usable without being technical, but also not reducing any capability. This is a direction we're trying to go forwards with, and it's not a one release thing. It's where we're working towards. You'll see in some of our previous releases, we've done things like removing advanced mode and that kind of thing. This one is just adding on to that work. So yeah, do you want to share my screen and then we can head on? So one of the first things that we've been working on for this release is we've changed the port that Home Assistant runs on. So this only affects new Home Assistant OS installs only. Everybody else keeps what they have. So if you've got a Home Assistant set up already, nothing will change for you. But what this means is, I'm using a demo here, but it means you can browse to homeassistant.local and not have to worry about a magic number at the end. This is a default setting for anybody setting up for new. There is the option to change it as well, but that's something we can get into a little bit later. Okay.
Yeah, so one of the next changes that we've made is that we're trying to make Home Assistant more approachable. We're trying to remove some of the more difficult names. So we used to have an advanced mode. We no longer have an advanced mode. Every feature that was gated behind an advanced mode, and this has been an ongoing project, is now either in accordion or we better explain actually what it does. And so, yeah, we were able to finish it in this release. So advanced mode is completely gone. We actually had to fix 43 different places. The features have not changed. It's just the way it is described. The biggest example here of things that we've simplified is that developer tools is now called tools, because you don't need to be a developer. You just want to do some YAML things, look at the actions, look at templates. That is now called tools.
Yeah, cool. For those of you that have seen the release notes, you may have seen that there is another thing that is coming soon, the ESPHome Starter Kit. There's a live stream for this on August the 12th at 9 p.m. Central European time. For me, that's 8 p.m. because I'm in the UK. If you want a link to the live stream, it's over on the release notes. We can maybe pop it in chat a bit later as well.
Yeah, and this is 1 week from now. And this is an official ESPHome product by a new commercial partner, Apollo Automation, of which the profits will fund the foundation, right? And actually, this brings us to how can you support us? Now, Home Assistant is being built by the Open Home Foundation. We are a non-profit based in Switzerland. We built Home Assistant, we built Music Assistant, we built ESPHome, 200 other libraries, protocols, you name it. With this community that we have around this, we license out the name to our commercial partners, Apollo Automation and Nabukasa. They built official licensed products, Home Assistant Cloud, ESPHome Starter Kit. And the profits of those products, 60% of it goes back into the foundation. That's how we have almost 80 people working today in all these projects, and we give everything away for free. Now, on top of that, you just could also see it in the video, we also have the official merch store. So I'm wearing a Home Assistant shirt. We just launched shirts with bigger Home Assistant, Music Assistant, ESPHome logo. There are beanies, sweaters, you name it. And of course, the best way to support us is to share your skills, right? Help develop one of your favorite projects. If you find a bug, help fix it. Help friends and family get started with Home Assistant, or help other community members create content, organize local meetups. There are many different ways. Now, one of the things I just mentioned to support this Home Assistant Cloud, and actually in this release, we have updated how Home Assistant Cloud looks. This has been a contribution from Chris Yanis from Nabukasa. And now it looks like this. So we've made it way more. We were actually, this panel previously was the panel with the oldest layout that we still had from the old days in the front end. Now it's completely modernized. At the top, you have an easy onboarding. And after that, we have a clear overview. The onboarding helps you go through all the new steps. And at the bottom, we have a clear overview of all the different features and all the things that are possible.
Yeah, I think this looks so much better than the old one. Everything's in the same place. It's so much easier to use. So.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. So another thing that we've been working on in the interest of approachability, we have added the option to adjust how your entity ID formats look. So you can now put the area before the floor or the device at the start of the name for it, or the ID for it, I should say. You can kind of put these around whichever way you want. That's kind of the aim here, is the ability to choose for yourself. You can also remove the area in the floor as well if you so choose. So you've got the entity and the device here, so temperature thermostat, and then you can do thermostat temperature. Yeah, and add the location. Yeah. I mean, this one's kind of hard to explain, but the demo probably shows it far better than I'm.
Well, and this this is part of our really long trajectory of fixing entity naming for having a strong default, while we won't break your existing setup. So hopefully here with this, we found a way where people can choose exactly the way they want the entity IDs to be, and we can have a good default that works best, what we think, for everyone out of the box.
Yeah. Moving on to one of the other things. In the last release, there was a lot of things with triggers and conditions. And in this one, we've added some more because we don't seem to be able to stop adding triggers and conditions. So if I head on over to automation, you've probably seen from some of these, there's a little bit of a sneak preview there. We've added the ability to set condition for the moon phase. I'm not entirely sure what this is used for. It's maybe a little bit niche, but we provide the tools and you work on the automations. That's the aim, right? So yeah, loads of different phases of the moon. I didn't know there was this many myself when I first saw this, but yeah, loads of different options here.
Yeah. So for werewolves, right? They also need to be able to use Home Assistant.
It's funny you say that. You know, this was my example automation. That's the only thing I could think of. There you go. You see, Missy mentioned it was to help with some of our witchy rituals to know what was. So you know,
also important.
And then the other one that's maybe a little bit more practical. We have a vibration sensor we can use now, and we can use the trigger for that. I've set up one here to sort of show that to set an automation for a notification when the washing machine is finished, if it's not a smart one. There's also, this is quite a nice bit, you can also add a little delay. So sometimes the washing machine starts and stops, but for here I've set it so that 2 minutes after there's no vibration detected, it will send me a notification to go hang the washing up. And that's the kind of use case for that one.
Yeah. Now, finally, the last change is more a organizational change that you might not experience except for certain cases, and that is the way we create devices in Home Assistant. Now, previously, Home Assistant was trying to be smart, and if you had two devices provided by two integrations, but they had a matching MAC address, they would be merged. Now, this had problems because if you had one server that was running two applications, let's say Plex and I don't know, like Image for your images, and both would use MAC address, then actually all those devices would be merged together and you see the mix of like two integrations, and it didn't really clarify, and we were always fighting in the UX how to like show which one comes from which, and basically it was a mess. So we decided in this release to split it up, which will make it easier for people to reason about what they see in the UI, but also actually help us solve a lot of bugs and race conditions in the backend, because there were like integrations fighting over things. That's already solved now as well. So most integrations did not overlap. So this impacts like a very tiny percentage. Like an example of which it does impact is like Yale Cloud and Yale Bluetooth. They are like two integrations representing the same device through a Bluetooth or a cloud connection. They will now be two devices. Which, by the way, is also nice because previously you would have two locks in that device, but you didn't know which one came from the cloud and which one would be local. Now you can know, oh, that's the cloud one. I just never use it because it's slow, and the local one will always work. That's the one I use. And I think that's it, right, Ashley, for the TL didn't see?
Yeah, the only thing is if that those changes to devices do affect you, you'll see a little button that you can click and then pick which device you want to do, just so you know. And yeah, that's it. I think, have we done the 10 minutes? I think that's about right.
We're about 11 minutes, so that's great. Now, if you want to see the full stream, that is available on our YouTube channel. So make sure you check it out. And that's it for the short section. Thank you.